little different from normal conclaves because here we are discussing ideas, ideology, narratives with the political elections also coming up soon. So, but I want to talk to you about coalitions versus one-party rule. What is better for India? Because both of you have been part of coalitions. Now, of course, there is a one-party rule at the center, more or less. So, Abhishek, Dr. Singhvi, I'll start with you, sir. What do you think is better, works better for governance?
See, first of all, there is no such thing as what works better. It's that old phrase of Alexander Pope, for forms of governance, let fools contend. Whatever is best governed is best. So whatever works, that's the correct fit. But I want to say pointedly to your pointed question that it's a myth, especially built up in the drawing rooms of Delhi, that strong 56-inch chest parties, one-rule parties are always better because it kind of stokes our feeling of strong, strength, nationalism, etc. They can be better, they are not necessarily so. Coalitions, among other things, have a very big advantage of a multi-level decision-making process. It allows less dictatorialism, it allows more consultative process, and therefore the refinement of the quality of decision-making is frequently better. It's another myth that coalition governments do not perform well on growth rates. Some of our best remarkably economic achievements have been during minority governments. Narasimha Rao is one example. And coalition governance, which is UPA 1 and 2, the highest growth rates you can imagine. So I think it is not very good for our feeling of stability and, you know, we want everything organized, every hair in place, every piece of cloth not sticking out. And that's very good because one-party rule. But actually, coalition governance, the dissonance, the diversity of views, the, if I may say, the cacophony of diverse views actually leads to better decision-making. But of course, you could have chaos with a bad coalition governance. You need good management in a coalition. So that's the general answer. I don't think there's a single one-size-fits-all answer.
Okay, thank you for that. But Dinesh bhai, you have also been part of a coalition government and you've seen, you know, even though you were the railway minister and you passed that, what I would call the dream railway budget, which you presented. But at that time, Mamata Banerjee objected to it and you actually had to leave the government for that. So there are compulsions, coalition governments, you know, maybe if it was one-party rule, that budget would have passed.
Well, first of all, let me congratulate NewsX team and Sharma's for this festival of ideas. And thank you very much for bringing this idea as well. So, Priya, the question is very simple. It is good for who? Ultimately, in democracy, whatever is good for the people, of the people, by the people, for the people. तो एक जगह है कोलिशन की सरकार जब होती है वो एक मजबूरी की सरकार होती है और एक पार्टी होती है वो एक मजबूत सरकार होती है and that is the reason world over people would want a strong government because we are not in isolation from the world at large. So if you see which country is respected the most, the country which is strong and the country which has a very strong leadership. So in last so many years, Indira Gandhi was very strong, so was Pandit Nehru. Rajiv Gandhi had one of the maximum number of MPs. So it is that government which is strong. That strong government can decide. Take for instance Chandrayaan. If you have a mix of few parties, for all you know, they might not have agreed, no, we don't want to spend here, we want to do this, we don't want to make this road, we want to make something else. So it's always, I mean, we all love khichdi, it's a good diet, but it is known as a khichdi government. And that is the reason, make no mistake, the people of this country, not only the Lieutenants Delhi, but the voters in the villages, they are so clear about it that we want a strong and a stable government. And that is the reason you look at Orissa, the same day election. They chose Naveen Patnaik on one side as far as state was concerned, and they chose Narendra Modi as far as the center was concerned. So I think for the country's stability, it is always good to have a strong government.
But then again, Dr. Singhvi, a strong government, yes, but the strong government can be with one strong leader. You have Indira Gandhi also, not just Narendra Modi. But you also had a very successful coalition, both in the Vajpayee years and in the UPA years. So what is that one thread that unifies all of them? Is it the strong leader, whether it's a coalition leader or a government leader?
I think, as I said, first of all, I don't think there is any generalization possible that all majority governments are by definition good, all coalition governments are by definition bad, or vice versa. Actually, it's a mistake also to confuse strength with coalitions or lack of strength with majorities. Take, for example, a very interesting thing, the atom bomb, or basic foreign policy, or the Chandrayaan mentioned by my good friend Dinesh ji just now. These are matters not of either coalition nor of single majority government. These are the pride of India because the foundations have been laid by successive governments, and there is a unspoken, unbroken rule of continuity in fundamentals like this. Do you know that the atom bomb was ready to be tested by Narasimha Rao? You know, this written down is well known. He had in fact fixed a date. Because of a particular opposition from a particular country outside India, the first thing he told Vajpayee when he came in is that you must complete what I had decided. And Vajpayee did it. So this is the continuity of India. Foreign policy is the continuity of India. You don't, think that this Chandrayaan flew yesterday because of this strong government or that strong government or because of this majority or that majority. Also, I think that's why I said it fits in with our notion of, as I said, I mean, it's more a metaphorical phrase now popularized by our Honorable Prime Minister. But 56-inch chest is not always good. There's a lot of feeling about unilateral decision making, which is not acceptable in a democracy. You've had some fantastic decision making in coalition governments. In fact, most of the major delicensing issues, banking reforms, so many reforms unheard of, happened during a minority government of Narasimha Rao. That all depends on a collectivity. Democracy is about collectivities. Me, myself, I sound good, and sometimes media projection makes I, me, myself very good, but they don't necessarily work in practice. Narasimha Rao worked how? He had a good collectivity of progressive liberals out for economic reform. I don't want to take the names of that 4 or 5 bureaucrats you know well, including a young minister at that time, now old. And then the later Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh, heading that group of 5 people. This is a collectivity which sat together and decided we have to go in this direction. I think that's what's important. So I think it's actually a myth to draw the equation in this way. You should be able to criticize an individual set of government policies or individual set of government, coalition or majority, equally for both.
Okay, before I go to Dinesh Bhai, one more question is, are you now owning Narasimha Rao as a Congress Prime Minister? Because one of your colleagues yesterday was...
That's another great myth. That's another great myth. Do you think Narasimha Rao did anything or wanted to do anything without being a congressman? He was fully a congressman. This is just spread because it's useful to have these narratives. It is useful to have a narrative that Patel was antagonistic to Congress. It is the GNP, Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, which is part of the Congress intrinsically. It's very nice and fashionable to talk about it. Narasimha Rao was a staunch congressman. He remained that to the end. He, in fact, had differences which he managed very well in the political fold because he knew that he was running a minority government. But to suggest that, do we own up to him as a Prime Minister, this is all not in a festival of ideas. That's too political.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so Dinesh ji, although this government especially has been saying, it's a strong government, strong leader, 56-inch chess leader, but you are going to the people as a coalition. The BJP is getting hold of, I think there are 31 one side, 26 on the other side or whatever. So it is going to be a battle of coalitions, or will it be a battle of one Narendra Modi versus India?
No, I think we should leave it to the people. And ultimately, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, somewhere down the line, whether it is the chief minister or whether it is the prime minister would be, people of the country always want to know who is going to lead us. When it comes to the state elections, they always want to know who's going to be the chief minister. And when it comes to the federal, the state, the central government, they would always want to know. So directly or indirectly, actually we are selecting the leadership. And then down the line it follows. And BJP was never ever saying that we want only ourselves. More the merrier, but it is very important that the foundation has to be strong. And I don't think so any political party, be it my friends, Congress party, would not say, no, we don't want more than 200 seats. So it is all dependent on the electoral, who they choose. Every political party would want to have maximum number of seats. So the process of decision making, even when you take the nuclear deal, we had a problem with the left party. And ultimately Manmohan Singh has to say, so be it. If you want to go, you go. So problem with the coalition government is decision-making process becomes very, very slow, and there are always pulls and pushes. And there's always, I don't want to use the word blackmailing, but sort of, that look here, if you are going to raise the fare of the railways, I'm going to pull the rug. So all these things, the modernization of things is coming to a standstill. So I'm not trying to say this is better or that is better. It is the people of the country are very clear as to what they want.
Dr. Singhvi, there's a very thin line between being dictatorial and being strong. So how does that work really?
Let me just step back a little bit, because this is, as I said, not the usual cacophony. It's a very civilized discussion. So I think we need to just look at some fundamentals. Fact one, UPA 10 years and this government is almost 10 years old, almost. Take any economic parameter, and I'm not demeaning, I'm not talking petty politics. Growth rates on the 10-year average from 04 to 14, individual average 5-year blocks, anyone you take, have been the highest ever. This government has not equaled it. Now, I'm not here to, you can say COVID, you can say financial crash, you can say all that. But this government has come nowhere near that average growth rate, and few other governments have come. That was, remember, a coalition of as diverse and disparate groups as the left and my friend's former party, Mamta ji. There cannot be a more disparate grouping. Fact one. Fact two, he's absolutely right. Nobody fights elections that you should be able to make a coalition. You fight election to be able to win on your own. So we are now talking of inevitabilities. You cannot have a vacuum. Now, fact number two, do you know that this strong I, me, myself, strong so-called government gets no more than 39% vote whenever Modi ji performs best? When he performs best, he gets 39%. Simple commonsensical arithmetic tells you that if you were to fight the elections as an aggregation of individual states, the national elections as an aggregation of individual states, if you were to minimize the division of that balance 70%, suppose 80% of that 70% did not get divided. Well, it's obvious, you may call it coalition, but it's obvious that a 39%er cannot win. So it is actually breeding on the divisiveness. It's not a majority in the sense in which we imagine it. A really super strong would be a 51%. Nobody is aspiring for that. Thirdly, if in economic parameters you've just had the preceding government showing remarkable performance and a huge number of achievements, certainly Mr. Modi has made many achievements. I have no hesitation in saying so. I don't think it's per se because of a one-party government or a multi-party government. That's not the answer. The answer is leadership provided. Yes, you had, I think, post-Nehru and post-Indira Gandhi, the one-party so-called single majority governments. How many have we had? This is an exception. I don't know how long this kind of exception will last. So we have to reckon in India with an embedded structural coalition era. We have to know how to work it well rather than hearken back to big majorities. Yes, Mr. Modi has got a majority, but that is not the structural era virtually from the demise of Mrs. Indira Gandhi.
So that was Rajiv Gandhi was the last, and that.
And Rajiv Gandhi really was not a planned prime minister. It happened during tragic circumstances.
Maybe accidental prime ministers do well.
How bad is the so-called accidental prime minister? You've written a book about it. He got the best growth rates for this country.
Which is true. You know what? Narasimha Rao and Dr. Manmohan Singh did not even know Narasimha Rao was going to be prime minister. In 13 days, he wrote out the liberalization roadmap. If anybody knew he was going to be prime minister, Narendra Modi. He was, he was sure of the results. He knew he was going to win. He knew he was going to even come back. Yet we haven't seen that kind of incremental economic reform. One big bang reform we've not seen from this government.
See, when we talk about economic reform, we have to understand whether the advantage of that reform is going downwards or not. The distribution system is as important. If that, let's say 10% or 8% or 7%, if it gets stuck on the top and if it is not going down, there is something which this government is doing right. So from 2014 to 2019, now we are not talking about anti-incumbency. We are talking about pro-incumbency. And I told you earlier that ultimately the country decides on who is the leadership. So yesterday, one of your colleague channels had the survey. And it's proved that Narendra Modi is he's the highest rating ever, even world rating. So when people see that you are at the rating of, and I totally agree with my friend, that show me 50%. So Narendra Modi's rating is actually 50 plus. And unfortunately, others are down below. I think democracy will do very well if we have a very strong opposition as well. I personally would love to have a very strong opposition, and I'm sure my friend also would like to have. Opposition has to be very, very strong in a democracy which really thrives and works. So and no government ever is permanent. We all will come and go. Nobody is permanent. But the country remains, so we have to make sure our fundamentals are very strong. And for that, somewhere down the line, something may not be right. I'm nobody to judge on the opposition, but I feel that there are so many issues in this country. If there is only one issue one thrives, what is the issue of opposition? Modi hatao. And that cannot be the issue. If you talk about what are we going to do if at all we come to power, people of this country always look for a roadmap. One mantra will not do. Same thing happened with Indira Gandhi. वो कहते हैं कि इंदिरा हटाओ, मैं कहती हूँ देश बचाओ, that's kind of slogan. So I think somewhere down the line, and like I said that I'm nobody to comment on the opposition, but for the sake of the country, we definitely need a very strong and a vibrant opposition, whichever may be.
Well said. But, the point that he has made, okay, opposition doesn't have a face, fine, but at least opposition should have a narrative apart from Modi hatao.
No, I think the opposition has a narrative. It's a different matter that we've been losing national elections. And that is why there are a large number of states where the opposition rules. The idea of recreating India in a presidential form is uniquely Modiji's. A presidential form of government with over-projection of a single person certainly is happening in our country, but that does not sit well with the parliamentary system at all. Suppose Mr. Modi is rated in the survey which my friend mentioned at 51%. Does it get him anywhere in a parliamentary democracy unless each of his individuals in the BJP wins? It's completely irrelevant, but it seems nice because we like to believe ourselves in a presidential mold. So I think these are matters of projection. Ultimately, if you were today to find very strong regional leaders, and regional leaders were to aggregate their national elections as an aggregation of state elections. And you actually had this one constituency, one person, at least in 500 constituencies. Where would be Mr. Modi with 39%? That's a point to remember. Number two, my friend mentioned trickling down inequality. Just look at, I'm not talking of economic growth now because I've already talked about it. The world's single largest social welfare scheme, a coalition government successfully ran it, which Mr. Modi ji, without acknowledging it, is running now, Manrega. A very big savior, by the way, in COVID, world's largest. The world's largest Bima Yojana. The world's largest food security program, not India's, world's largest. There were 6, 7 schemes like this, derided sometimes as leftist, called sometimes as Jholawala, ridiculed sometimes as a National Advisory Council, but they have become your mainstay. When the banking crisis struck worldwide, it was these schemes which kept India above and afloat. So it is not that you, and the Gini coefficient by which you measure inequality, the largest number of people ever moved above the poverty line were in the 10 years of UPA government. The statistics of the government of India show that the largest number of people, 24%, moved above the poverty line. So I think, again, it's this per se feeling we have because we saw a large number of years of coalition governments. Mr. Modi certainly has a great power of attraction in terms of showing the strength, showing that a single party rule alone is going to be, but that is not necessarily fact.
Fair enough. Last point to you. At the end of the day, Prime Minister Modi may, criticize the UPA government or whatever, but he is adopting their welfare schemes, whether it is Narega, whether it is Aadhaar, whether, the schemes of the earlier government is what this government is delivering on, you can say. What is the big idea that this government has brought that they are going to take forward?
The big idea is the idea of India, which the opposition
right
always talk about. But idea of India is not only one idea of India. It's a varied idea of India. And Indian democracy is live and thriving. I mean, look at the Supreme Courts. Look at the only issue which I, as a former member of Parliament, and I've been in Parliament for long enough, I just don't understand why Parliament should not function. I think that is where, if I were in the opposition, I would not lose the opportunity, and I'm sure my friend will definitely agree, that question hour, that's your opportunity to put the government on the dock. So even before the question hour starts, you go to the well of the house. If you talk about Manipur, what would have happened if you discuss Manipur after 1 hour, after question hour? At least there is so much you can discuss. I, as a minister, would love, I would ask the opposition कि भाई क्या है आज? उस समय बीजेपी थी तो कि नहीं आज भी थोड़ा हल्ला होगा. मैंने कहा हाँ बिल्कुल हल्ला करो. At least हमको responsibility तो कम हो जाती. So I think in all seriousness, you have to use that platform. And again, I said I'm nobody to teach them. They are very wise people, and nobody can take away from what Rajiv Gandhi doing. I mean, there's a lot of modernization in terms of technology and all. My friend Sam was also here. So nobody is taking away the credit, even for Chandrayaan. Definitely nobody is taking away the credit. The credit is there, but in spite of that, I'm sure you'll agree that there is something right this government is doing. They are getting elected again and again, and there's something not right which the opposition is doing, that people are not electing as far as the center is concerned.
Sir, I think that is a very good last...
Dinesh bhai, that cuts both ways. That's a dangerous sentence. If electoral validation meant you're doing well, then electoral validation also includes the negative. A lot of things you don't do well enough. And therefore, this electoral validation changes all the time.
Of course,
and there are enough things in democracy which you don't do well, you do well certainly sometimes.
So that's the strength of democracy.
Electoral validation by itself is not a guarantee of being correct.
For the people, of the people, by the people.
On that note, that is a lovely note to end on this Festival of Ideas. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking time out and being with us. Thank you.